Welcome back to Weird Deaths of British Monarchs Part 2. Let's jump right in. Edward V came to a tragic death at just 13 years old, and you may know him better as one of the princes in the Tower. After his father, Edward IV's death, he inherited the throne at 12 years old in 1483. Being so young, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, his uncle, was to serve as his protector. Edward's coronation was set for June 24th, and he was escorted to London with his uncle to wait in the Tower of London. They also brought his younger brother Richard, Duke of York, who was 9 at the time. They were spotted playing outside occasionally until eventually no one ever saw them again. These two became known as the princes in the Tower. Richard allowed rumours to spread that questioned the legitimacy of Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville's marriage, therefore questioning the legitimacy of Edward's rule altogether. He went on to claim himself the rightful heir to the throne. Parliament bended to Richard's ways. The young king had disappeared, and his heir and younger brother had disappeared with him. They passed the Titulus Regius Statute, invalidating the royal marriage and ratified Richard's succession to the throne. It wasn't really addressed at the time, but today it is strongly assumed that they were murdered. And not to point any fingers, but there's a pretty obvious person I think we could all accuse. In 1674, the bodies of 2 young boys were discovered in the Tower. Testing was inconclusive, but they were formally buried at Westminster Abbey by Charles II. Edward the Martyr. One of our early Anglo-Saxon kings died in 1978. He was one of King Edgar's sons, but supporters split between him and his younger, legitimately recognised brother, Athelred the Unready. Edward gained the crown after some dispute, but this rule was cut short by his unusual death. After a short 3-year rule, he was murdered at Corfe Castle in Dorset at just 16 years old. He was said to be visiting Ethelred, his half-brother, and Ethelrith, Ethelred's mother, and when he rode up on his horse, suddenly he was stabbed in the back as he dismounted. His horse bolted, dragging him into the night. And this may not be the real story, but this was the one that has stuck around. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle does mention this event on the 18th of March of 978. The Chronicle writes, "No worse deed for the English race was done than this was, since they first sought out the land of Britain. Men murdered him, but God exalted him. In life he was an earthly king, after death he is now a heavenly saint. His earthly relatives would not avenge him, but his heavenly Father has much avenged him." There is still much uncertainty around the event, but most records note that he was betrayed, hence the name he was given, a martyr, an innocent victim. With Ethelred not being more than 10 years old, it is unlikely that he personally was responsible for the murder of his brother. However, many hold Ethelred, his stepmother, or her advisors responsible, noting that they attacked him whilst dismounting. But why? There's some theories floating around. Edward was directly blocking Ethelred from the throne, and they may have had a personal quarrel with Ethelthryth. And some later records tend to portray Edward as an unstable ruler, resorting to violence and heated speech towards his enemies, advisors, and his family alike. Some fingers were also pointed to Ealdorman Ethelthray, who was his closest advisor, because Edward was pulling away from his influence. But all this is unproven and simply speculation. After his suspicious death, he was buried first at Wareham without royal ceremony, and lay untouched for a year, but he was reinterred to Shaftesbury Abbey with a larger public ceremony. It is said that his body was as fresh as the day he died. This miracle led to his status as a saint. Although he was never canonized, his status created a cult following. He had relics moved into Shaftesbury by his body in 1001. A feast day for Edward the Martyr was signed into law in 1008 under his half-brother's rule, celebrated still to this day as Edward the Martyr's feast day, which is recognised on the 18th of March. Last but not least is William III. He ruled as king alongside his wife Mary II from 1689 until his own death in 1702. It was in February during his stay at Hampton Court Palace that William went on a fateful ride around the grounds. The story goes that his horse stumbled on a molehill, flinging William to the ground and breaking his collarbone. Resisting the advice from his physicians, he wanted to travel home to Kensington Palace. Only after a few days, his health deteriorated fast, and William died from pneumonia from complications with the wound. William and his wife came to power by taking the crown from James II, Mary's own father, in what is called the Glorious Revolution. They were welcomed and celebrated by the majority of the population of Protestants in England. This act of deposing the Catholic king created ripples of discontent from their Catholic followers and a drive for the exiled Catholic family to reclaim their right to the throne. These followers were called Jacobites. After William's death, these Jacobites reportedly toasted to the little gentleman in the black velvet waistcoat, aka the mole that dug his hole in the right spot. It was their hope that after William's death, the rightful king was one step closer to the crown. However, after Anne's death, no one gave the Stuarts a second look. There we have some more weird deaths, and I'm already working on a part 3, so if you have any suggestions, please leave them below in the comments. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.